Oh.
All right, it's 6 o'clock. I'm going to go ahead and call to order the city council meeting of February 25th. If you'd all join me, I've asked John Clayton to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Oh, that's what you were asking. Sorry, I didn't agree to lead.
Okay, I can lead.
To follow. Would you?
I would be happy to lead. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Could I get a roll call, please?
Westwood,
Here.
Conley. Here. Daniels. Here. Miller.
Here.
Ronning.
Yes.
Rude. Yes. Tupin.
Here.
All right, I will entertain a motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
I move to adopt the agenda as presented.
I second.
Have a motion from Councilmember Conley, second from Councilmember Ronning. Discussion.
Did you want to move the Brewery Hill feasibility study up, or you want to go over that?
I was looking at rearranging things a little bit, but given that our one item is actually a public hearing too, I'm inclined to think that we'll keep it the same, and the business portion will just be really, really short.
Okay.
But I'm open to, if anybody else feels strongly one way or another. I just recognizing we've got folks here. All right, hearing no further discussion, could we get a roll call?
Conley.
Yes.
Daniels.
Yes.
Miller.
Yes.
Ronning. Yes. Rude.
Yes.
Tupin.
Yes.
All right, I will entertain a motion for the minutes of the February 11th meeting.
I move to approve the minutes of February 11th, 2025.
I second.
All right, motion from Councilmember Ronning, second from Councilmember Conley. Discussion. Hearing none, let's go ahead and do a vote.
Conley.
Yes.
Daniels.
Yes.
Miller.
Yes.
Ronning. Yes. Rude.
Yes.
Tupin.
Yes.
All right. I am going to do a slight rearrange of the schedule of the mayor's comments here. So I'm going to hit my list first, and then we'll go to Tom, which is so yeah. So first off, a personal thanks from me to staff and council president for keeping things on the rails while I got called out for a family emergency last week. So thank you guys for your efforts. The auditors are here this week doing their audit on the previous year's thing that they do. So if you see them here, they're here through tomorrow. I believe they'll be done. We've been chasing down some paperwork for them. I'm not aware of anything that's come up of significance at this point. We had a really interesting conversation with them today, specifically having to do with resort tax and as it pertains to potentially using some of that for some of our fire obligation that we have. Last year, you may recall that as we got into it, there was this question about whether we could buy with resort tax an audit that was, or an asset that was owned by another entity. I think we got clarification today. Well, the biggest clarification we got was go to legal counsel and get an opinion, but that was not problematic. What we would just need to do is we want to have a paper trail, but that's something that may be on our agenda. Now, that does not preclude needing to address the percentage of our budget that it is, but it does give us a little bit of more wiggle room as we go into the upcoming budget cycle. Another thing kind of related to dollars, our front office staff identified an opportunity with the money that we have sitting in account as we are waiting for some of the emergency funding to come get paid, which apparently takes years and years and years to happen.
Great.
And so they took that opportunity to move those funds from an account that's getting 0.5% a year to an account that's getting, I think, closer to 5% a year.
Mm-hmm.
So that'll add an additional $90,000, and just part of that being a good steward of the money. So thank you to them for identifying that. Rocky Fork, we don't have an update, but we've told we'll have one within the week. So hopefully we'll get moving forward on that really, really quickly. So we did reach out to do a follow-up to them, and they reminded it was just the second Tuesday in February when we reached out, and they told us 30 days. So in fairness, we've still got another couple weeks before they've missed their deadline. We did get notified today on the Eagle's Nest that the state DES is providing 100% of the funding to basically have our grant filled out. They have like 5 companies that they work with that are outsourcers and writers, which means it won't be staff doing it. We don't have to pay WWC to do it. That process is going to be done and filled out with no expense to the city.
Excellent.
And that was directly in response to the resolution that council put forth and passed, so thank you.
Good.
Yay.
And then just a reminder, I'm going to Helena tomorrow for the mayor's conference, the executive conference and stuff, including we'll be meeting with the legislators. We've got a couple of different blocks where we can go grill the legislators. So if there's things that council has a particular interest on or wants to follow up and have me follow up, please shoot those questions off to me.
So adding to the confusion involved with, the HR, the Office of Personnel Management.
All right, thank you. We will let people at home control their own mute, but we'll mute everybody if needed to. So thank you, Bonnie, for that. Tom, are you okay if I push you back just a couple minutes in the agenda? I think the business portion of our agenda will be really, really quick tonight, and then I can keep the presentations closer together. That's an ad hoc change there. What I would like to do at this point is open up for public comments on the agenda. Specifically, what we do have on the agenda tonight is the ward boundary relocation. It's our first hearing. And then there's some stuff that the council will be discussing a little bit later on, but there'll probably be an opportunity to and all of those. But I will go ahead, keeping with our agenda, and open up the floor. If you would like to comment on anything that's on the agenda, please step to the podium. We'll go to the room first. If it is outside of the agenda, there will be an opportunity for public comment at the end of the meeting, which is anything that's in front of the council's purview. So with that, I'll go ahead and open the public comment. We'll look around the room. Not seeing anything jump to the podium, so I'm not pulling up my 3-minute timer just yet. Anybody online, if you could turn on your camera, or optionally just come off mute so that I know you'd like to address the council. Going twice. And to keep it official, going 3 times, we'll go ahead and close the public comments. All right. With that, let's move to the action items on our agenda. I'll entertain a motion for 852, and if the motioner would please state the name for the record and also include that is the first reading of and public hearing. And what we'll do is, we'll entertain the motion, we'll have a little discussion, then we'll open it for the public hearing at that point in time.
Okay, I move to approve ordinance number 852, second amended, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Red Lodge, Montana, adopting, amending city council wards based on the 2020 census data for the City of Red Lodge, Montana.
I second that.
Have a motion from Councilmember Ronning, a second from Councilmember Conley. Is there somebody from the council who would like to address this, or do you want me to do it?
You can go, I was just gonna introduce it. Basically this is coming about, as we all know from our last meeting, trying to balance out, the population of the different wards. Currently, Ward 1, this is from the 2020 census, so it's probably even higher than it is here, because we all know that that's the majority of where our growth is. Ward 1 has 793, Ward 2 is 518, and Ward 3 is 638. By moving, the citizens that are east of Highway 212 that are currently in Ward 1 into Ward 2, it would change it. Ward 1 would be 619, Ward 2 would be 692, and Ward 3 would be 638. So take it away.
Ward 1 will be just a little bit smaller, but it's anticipated that will be very short-lived with the growth patterns that are happening. I will add that this is in sync with the county changing the precincts to match. And so there's a whole bunch of election stuff that hurdles have been cleared there. One of the things that does have to be done is there has to be a mailing that goes out notifying everybody. By doing this in conjunction with the county, we will not incur a cost of that at all. It'll just be included within their mailing that goes out. Is there anything else?
I have a question. It was on a committee meeting agenda today. Anything interesting that come up from that discussion?
No, we just mainly talked about how it would be on tonight's meeting, because we had a pretty good discussion at our last committee meeting, when Crystal from the county came to our meeting. And then we also talked about it at our last city council meeting,
Okay.
so.
Yes,
It's
anything new?
mainly, they feel, the county feels we're probably gonna have to do it again in another 5 years because of the growth on the west end.
It's likely not a one and done.
I know,
Sure.
and the next time they do it, they'll probably also have to change the boundary between Ward 3 and 2. This is just changing the boundary between 1 and 2.
All right, any other discussion at the table before we open it for a public hearing? All right, so, because I don't get in trouble with Lonnie, we're going to go ahead and open this up for a public hearing on the first reading of the ordinance to amend ward boundary locations. Public hearing is open. We'll look to the room. Seeing nobody jump to the podium, we'll look to online. Going twice and 3 times to make it official, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing. All right, any further discussion at the table, or are we ready for a vote?
Ready for a vote?
All right. I was just gonna throw out one of those fancy Robert's rules. Question has been called. So, can I give the roll call vote, please?
Conley?
Yeah.
Daniel?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
Ronnie?
Yes.
Rude?
Yes,
Tupin?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Just a reminder that will be up at the next meeting again for the second reading. And then that will finalize it long before the April 19th filing date, and the county can take care of all their stuff, before we go. And with that, that concludes kind of the action portion of our meeting.
Okay.
Sweet, new record. With that, what I'd like to do is we move into the council portion of the agenda. What I'd like to do is start by asking, Tom to come and give a presentation and introduce himself. He's gonna shoot for 15 minutes, but we're gonna leave some time for Q&A answers and stuff as well. This is a follow-up conversation to a conversation that first happened at the Red Lodge Business Association in the midst of all the fires down in LA. And there was a very simple question that asked is, hey, is something like that possible here in Red Lodge? And we said, let's let the man who knows do the talking.
Great. For the record, Tom Kuntz, KUNTC, and I am fire chief. I think along the mayor's intro there, you know, this conversation came up in the LA wildfires. You saw a significant amount of news coverage on fire hydrants and whether the fire hydrants worked and didn't work. And it brought up something that I think is important to understand in our community, and I think more specifically in parts of our community. So I looked at the capital improvements plan and sat with the Public Works Committee today about trying to work on some solutions to this. But I think it's important for you to understand and our community to understand that at the golf course right now, we barely have enough water for one fire hydrant to operate. So if we open 2 fire hydrants, that means you're getting half the water. And if you open 1 fire hydrant on the south end of the golf course and you open 1 on the north end of the golf course, that 1 on the north end of the golf course is going to suck that 1 on the south end of the golf course completely dry. So that's a system design, and it's not far out of system. So part of the capital improvement plan that you'll be looking at in a little while, one of the items on there is an improvement to that. So when that is fixed, we will be able to have 2 fire hydrants. So I think that's just, it's really important to understand in terms of the risk for the community and what that looks like, that when we see fire hydrants out on the streets, they're not designed to all be able to operate at the same time. And if we were to have a fire downtown, we would actually look to grab fire hydrants from different parts of town and bring them into the center of town, because that pulls from different feeders into the water system and allows us to pull more water from those pieces. Then the second piece is that all water systems are limited. And we saw this when we had the flood and we had a breach of some of our water system, that you can drain our water system in a few hours if you have too many things open, right? And so that again, that it's not, that fire hydrants are not an unlimited supply of water. And I think there's sometimes with the public a misunderstanding of how fire hydrants work when you have a large fire. So then there's a second piece to this, right, which is, can something like what happened in LA happen in Red Lodge. Is that possible? And the answer is yes. Very, very clearly, it's yes. So what did happen in LA, essentially, and it happened in Paradise, it happened in Fort McMurray, it happened in Dillon, Montana, is that a fire started at a time when it was warm. It wasn't even hot. Like, I think it was 60 degrees in LA when they actually had this happen. So it was warm, it was windy, and it was dry. So if you think about, if you want to go back into our fall of this year, you will find a number of days where it was warm, it was windy, and it was dry. And so the difference between having a fire in that kind of situation and not having a fire is often a fire start, right? And so there's a couple of things that we rely on. And I think in our minds, we think about these as wildland urban interface fires, which that have the big fire like we did in the Robinson Draw fire south of town, and the flames come rushing into town, they catch the town on fire, and the town burns, right? Not necessarily how it works, or that it has to work that way. Actually, I think for us, our biggest risk is a fire that starts in town. I think actually we would probably do a pretty good job of protecting a fire moving from the outside into town, and our risk profile is actually higher for a fire that starts in town on a hot, dry, windy day, and then has the ability to move through town. We have older houses built out of wood, built close together, and we have hot, dry, windy days. So does that mean it's likely that our town is going to burn down? No, it's not. I mean, I'm not here to be the prophecy of doom and gloom. I think you know, when you really look even across the Intermountain West and you say how often does this happen, it is still a pretty rare occurrence, but that it is possible, and good fire protection is part of that. And we sit here in a room that was built in the early 1900s for one purpose. And I assume you guys are very familiar with what that purpose was. This is where the horses lived. This was the fire station originally. Red Lodge was one of the first communities in Montana to have a paid fire department. And we had 3 paid firefighters in going back as far as the early 1900s. And they had one primary job, and that was to take care of the horses. So they lived upstairs, and they took care of the horses down here. And there were fire trucks in here, and so when there was a fire, they would tie up, get the horses, is the word that I'm missing when you do harness, they would harness the horses to the fire trucks, and then that's how they would. So there was an effort early on in our community and a recognition in our community that fire created a danger and that you needed to have a community with fire hydrants and with fire protection. So we have primarily been a volunteer fire department, but we have been actually a combination fire department, which is having some paid folks and some volunteers for a very, very long time. And the fire chief later, when we didn't have horses, the fire chief would live upstairs. And so that upstairs was where the fire chief lived. And that actually went till just before I started here in the early 90s, believe it or not. When that changed. So just that recognition of the importance of fire protection, the recognition of the importance of fire protection for the community, and the understanding that we do have risks. I think it's easy sometimes to forget about those risks, but that's one of the things that we work hard in our fire organization to minimize, so that we have good responses, quick responses, well-trained folks. But it does drive down the road, and the mayor alluded to this as well, which is there's a cost to that, right? So we are very economically efficient because we are primarily a volunteer fire department. And we are also way more efficient than we used to be because we're a combined organization. If the city were to be maintaining its own fire organization and to do it at the level that we're currently doing it, probably would be 4 or 5 times the cost that you are currently paying to do it completely independently of the rural fire district that sits around you and the other organizations that we fold into that fire protection piece. And I think that's an important thing to understand, is that there is, you can't have fire protection without the cost that goes along with that. And you as a council, I have been here doing this for almost 33 years now. And I sat and did budget hearings with the council for many, many years. But I think you guys have been insulated a little bit from that in the fire protection world. Some of you have sat, and currently Councilman Miller does sit on our Emergency Services Committee to understand in detail some more of that budget stuff and some of those expenses. But that you aren't having to worry about the details of fire protection because of the way that we're set up currently. So that comes to that piece of, there's a huge capital piece and there's an operational piece. In fire protection, capital is expensive and it's changed a lot. So the city actually still owns a fire truck that we purchased with a mill levy that we levied in 2004. I think we actually levied it in 2003 and purchased the truck in 2004. And we paid for that for 10 years. That's the only voted tax levy that I know of that's happened in the last 30 years. The city still does own that truck. It is used by the rural fire district. It's maintained, completely maintained, insured, and operated by the fire district under the terms of our agreement, but the city does still own that truck. We paid $240,000 for it. Currently, that truck is probably close to worth that amount of money, believe it or not. And a new truck built to that basically exact same spec today is $1 million+. And will take 5 years to get, somewhere between 4 and 5 years. So that's been a big change, and it actually changed a lot. Even 4 years ago in 2020, 2019, you could get a fire truck. We actually started trying to replace that truck in 2019, and we thought it would be about $600,000. So that move has moved significantly. I do understand the challenges that the council has in budget and budget operations in general. There are some opportunities there with resort tax to balance our agreement a little bit so that resort tax maybe can bear some of that burden. But there has been a lot of talk over the years of annexing the city into the rural fire district. So the rural fire district would basically annex over the city and would provide that protection as a district. So it'd be kind of like if you think about a school district overlaying the city, right? And it's not an independent school district for the city, and so it overlays the whole piece. Members of the city would be eligible to sit on the rural fire district board to express their interests or represent their interests. And the tax rate would be the same in mills across the entire district. The city does have higher needs than generally the rural fire district does, and it's because of more houses, closer together, and commercial buildings. And so one of the things that influences the need for fire protection is also insurance ratings, becoming more significant as insurance rates go up. Some of what drives the equipment and quantity equipment in capital terms that the fire district needs to maintain to provide protection is the city. So, in order to provide adequate protection to the outside of the city, we need to have one fire truck in terms of ISO. In order to do it in the city, we need to have at least 3, and we should have a ladder truck as well. And so, that capital, by the way, the ladder trucks cost about $1.8 million to buy. And so you can get a good used one for about $500,000. And so, again, those capital expenses are significant in terms of what the fire department needs. We just got a grant for our protective clothing that we wear, and it's about $6,000 just for our coats, pants, boots, helmets. So just an idea of what that capital piece is. We were fortunate to get a grant for it. Hopefully, we'll actually get the grant. We applied for it. I mean, we actually applied for the grant, got the grant, got approved for the grant, ordered the equipment, and then the federal government stopped paying grants. So we're hoping that funding will come through for us. So that's that. I mean, I told the mayor, you want me to talk for 15 minutes. I'm not sure I can introduce myself in 15 minutes. And so that's like, condensing like 4 hours into like that.
So while we've got Tom here, Councilmember Rude, go ahead.
I have a question. Tim was here 2 weeks ago, as you
Yeah.
know, and did a great job.
Great.
I feel like I'm conversant about air foam compression and all
Yeah.
that. But he also mentioned at the corner of 78 and Lazy M is the pump house.
Yeah.
It needs repair. Is that gonna happen soon?
That's what I was talking about in the beginning. It's not actually necessarily preparing the pump house, it's bypassing it.
Bypass,
Yeah.
and the flow, the pressure will be the flow will be harder, but the pressure will be or some,
Essentially, it will increase both flow and pressure
and
with the
And
bypass.
it'll be gravity as opposed
And
to
then you
motors
won't,
doing it.
and you won't have to maintain the pump house anymore.
And that'll be the 16-inch bypass that's in the CIP
okay.
that we'll
Right.
talk.
And you'll see that in the budget, because it's something we've been planning and working
Okay.
toward.
All right.
So, other questions, Councilmember Conley?
Also, there were 3 things that I wanted to at least put out there. When Tim did come to Public Health and Safety, I was surprised that if you drive up to a house fire, the first thing you do is don't go to the hydrant. He said that you go to water trucks, and how much water, and you have like 2 or 3 of them, water trucks, before you ever go to the hydrant. So that was an interesting, point.
Yeah, so that's driven out of our operations and that we operate both within the city and in the rural area. And so we have a standard way of operating on a house fire that's the same whether the fire's in the city or in the rural. And, what we know is that we carry 1,000 gallons on our first out truck, 2,500 gallons on the next 2. So between the 3 of them, that's 6,000 gallons of water, and we can actually do a lot with that if we're gonna be able to save the house. And so if we're not gonna be able to save the house, then that next step is to be hooking up to a fire hydrant to, be able to do more with that. That's different if we're downtown and we're gonna go to a hydrant right away.
So that was kind of
We need more water.
interesting.
Yes.
Also, and I just want to clarify that we must have some ordinance, or there must be a state law that you never drive over a water hose.
I don't know that there is an ordinance or a state law, but it's good practice, to not drive over a water hose.
Yeah, well, it's just something that people should know.
Yes.
Especially if you're doing a fire hydrant here and one over there, that's gonna be a long hose.
Yes.
The other thing is with the Palisades fire, and I don't think I've heard the outcome. Apparently, there had been a fire, that was put out around New Year's. And I know that sometimes the fires go underground and smolder, and I guess they didn't monitor it. And is that something that you guys are aware of? It? What's your policy on monitoring those? So you get a big wind and it kicks it up and brings it out, and then the
I would love to tell you that doesn't happen. It's not uncommon. So what it is not uncommon for, and wildland fires to think or hope that the fire is out and to have the weather conditions change, pick back up, and to have that fire escape what you thought was a contained fire. It's some of the nature of fire. We work very hard to monitor those so that if that happens, then we can catch it quickly and put it out. But that's a pretty common thing.
I remember with Mount Maurice, it was like, when we have 2 feet of snow, then I'll tell you the fire is out.
Yeah, and that's a good example of that, right? Like, you know, that fire was so big, it was really hard to make sure that you could have it out. And there was a lot of, I'll call it discussion with our neighbors at the Forest Service to make sure that we had adequate resources here so that that was monitored until basically the snow flow. Yeah, so.
Councilmember Ronnie?
I just have a quick question. You guys have done an amazing job of keeping our ISO rating down, you know, at a protection class 4. But a lot of carriers now are switching from ISO ratings to fire protection zones. And and Red Lodge has been deemed a higher risk area because of the surrounding forests. Is there any way that, our fire department can work with this new way of rating for this? Because people's insurance rates are going up, even though we have a really good fire protection class, because we're now considered a high-risk area for fire.
Not that I know about, to be honest with you. So, insurance companies are mostly, there's 2 issues. They're either raising rates or they are dropping folks in higher risk areas.
Exactly.
And so, Red Lodge is definitely at risk for that. So, but it also has to do with, loss history too. And so, you know, the better we are at fire protection, they're getting better at, insurance companies used to basically rely on ISO, which is now called VeriRisk, to build that rating and that protection class. Now they have more data than, you know, they would call the insurance company and say, how far are these guys from the fire station? Insurance agents would be like 4.98 miles.
Yes.
5 miles is the limit. And then now they're calling back and they're like, oh, that house that is 7.36 miles from the fire station, you know, so there's just so much more data, and their ability to analyze that data is much better. But they're also, I believe, becoming more risk averse.
Very much so.
Yeah.
I will 100% agree with that.
And they're not, the competition isn't high enough that they're worried about, no one's eager to pick up that, you know. Insurance companies have always been risk averse and have always moved around in what they cover, but usually somebody else then sees that as an opportunity and comes in and picks up that market. Right now what's happening is no one's picking up.
Other questions from council? All right, thank you, Tom.
Sure.
I will
Thank you, Tom.
add to the end of our conversation, particularly as we're moving into the budget conversation. Tom and I have been in conversations quite literally for a year, and my understanding is those conversations were predating even my time in office. And we're working together. In one sense, there's some competing needs. I'm going to be, of course, working to make sure that the city's paying as little as possible, and Tom, in fairness, has a job to make sure that we're paying as much as possible. The part that we are in agreement with.
Trying to make sure the community is protected as much as
Yeah,
possible.
yeah. But in fairness, we also recognize that we're both dealing with the same customer base and taxpayers, and so we will continue to look at that and work with that. He mentioned the possibility of annexation. I think we're gonna probably, and one of the things I'm gonna be addressing and digging into this week up at the mayor's conference is there's, as all legalese is, there's some different thoughts and approaches on how we do that. One advantage of that is that we could annex into that district. There's a question whether that has to be done by petition signature or if that's something that council could do through council action. If we have that conversation, I want to be clear that people's taxes, unless we cut city taxes, their taxes would be going up. just because it's not the city that would be collecting it. It's kind of like school districts taking additional money and stuff. So that's a conversation we'll have. One of the things that has come up in our conversations with Tom is he mentioned that, right now we pay, we pay 28 mills per the contract agreement we have in place. The taxing, the way it's set up with, I'm gonna use the wrong words, I'm gonna say fixed and variable mills, but it's actually called floating, what's the persistent? Permissive mill. So, but there is one mill that is a mill is a mill is a mill is a mill. There is another mill, thanks to our lovely legislature many, many years ago, that can only grow by 1/2 the rate of inflation over the last 3 years. And so if you draw a bell curve of actual inflation and then you say, here's 1/2 of inflation, it doesn't take a genius to figure out which one goes up higher. So their mill levy that they have in that district is actually made up of 2 mills. And so mathematically, right now, that works out to about 22 mills is what I think they're paying of the equivalent of our mills, sort of a thing. Did I hear a noise of, we're getting at?
It's 20 mils,
It's-
20 point something.
Okay, so there's a variance there, and one of the things is if we became part of that district, it's very likely that they would have to go to the wider district and have them pay more as well. So there's a lot of moving pieces that are all connected here.
Yeah.
And we will continue to work with that. I'm open to ideas. Like I said, I'm gonna be very high focus of my research the next few days, and we will continue to work together. Before our budget gets here, we'll come with a proposal of how we're gonna get through this year, but also with an eye to how we're gonna get through the next many years as well.
Fred, can I make one more comment?
Please.
So just one comment about that. When that agreement was made, the reason there's a difference there is it has to do with capital. So what happened is that when we made the agreement originally, the city didn't have funds to basically come into the agreement with an equal amount of stuff. So what happened is that the city only had 1 fire truck compared to
We had a smaller down payment.
everything else. What's that?
We had a smaller down payment.
You had a very much smaller down payment, and so that's the challenge that exists, that it costs more to provide fire protection to the city because of those things that I talked about in terms of capital. And then the city didn't have any capital coming into it, which is part of why we did this agreement. And so that ended up with a disparity that still, the rural fire district still has all the capital and the city doesn't. And I know you see that piece in other ends of other challenges that the city has, but there was that difference between capital and.
How close are we to having our PMI insurance paid off? So we can pay the same rate as everybody else? All right. Any last questions for Tom? Tom, thank you very, very much for taking your evening away to come there. With that, we'll go to, our regular council business agenda. We will start out with, public health and safety, which we will look to Committee Chair Con Lee to give us a brief update there.
Yes, we were joined this morning besides Chief, with, Officer, I guess he's Sergeant Jordan Webb. They've, just did a huge fentanyl and meth bust. So, it's really, really good to get that amount of drugs off the street, to say the least. So that was very interesting. We also talked about the police commission. The state used to be that the police commissioners would be a 4-year term, and the state's changed it to 3 years. So we're going to need to do an ordinance to change our municipal code, for that. Also, when I was checking the state, they have other rules such as, only one, the commissioners should be spread out 1 year at a time, so that, they don't all, so that was kind of an interesting thing. So we're gonna be looking at that, definitely. We talked a lot about the snow ordinance. The current snow ordinance covers Broadway to the roundabout, and on the east and west, to the alleys for snow removal on sidewalks. the discussion was, should we think about requiring snow removal on all sidewalks for school routes? Should we consider having all sidewalks cleared of snow throughout the city? So those are discussions ongoing. We'll see how that comes out. I did go to Facebook Buzz just to get some opinions. I have gotten one already. So we know that there'll be a lot no's, but at least they know what's going on. We also talked about trash. The ordinance currently covers residential trash, but no dumpsters. And we know that there's commercial dumpsters, and then there's construction dumpsters with no lids on them. So when the wind blows, things could fly out and about. And we're going to have to look at that ordinance as well. And let's see, Chief Schrock also mentioned that the school board is looking to a safety meal levy to cover a school resource officer. So they're proposing 50% for the levy and the officer there 20 hours. And also Chief Schrock and his office and helpers have applied for other grants as well. I think it was Danae that
She's working on one.
has been working on a bunch of grants to help that as well, so we'll see where that goes.
So kind of a sneak peek into the future. The current year cycle, what we had budgeted was 25% of a staff position that the city would cover for a resource officer, and they would do 75%, because they have them 9 months and we had them 3. It looks like what we would see is that would change to a 50-50, but in return, the school would only be expecting them for 20 hours a week during the school year as opposed to full-time during the school year. So, like I said, I anticipate that there'll be a different number put in for the budget proposal, and that'll be behind it.
So everybody's working very hard on getting a school resource officer in our schools, both RPD and the school board.
Any questions or comments from the Public Health and Safety Committee? All right, thank you, Councilmember Conley. Admin and Finance, Council Chair or Committee Chair Ronning.
Well, I didn't have our discussion on resolution number 3683, an agreement to participate in 457B retirement plan for employees. It is in the packet. Lonnie, if you'd like to talk about it a little bit?
Sure. Is my outside voice?
Okay.
So this is kind of just, it's a voluntary program for city employees. They're not required to do this, and there's no match on the city side. So it doesn't cost the city anything, for us to be in this plan. And it's just kind of more of a savings plan for retirement for employees. It just gives them another option. They can pick how much they want, pulled out of their checks every week or every pay period or whatever, to go into this account. As far as on the accounting side of it, it's super simple to set up the withdrawal and then submitting it and stuff. But it's just another added benefit to the employees, looking for retirement and stuff.
Questions from the council for Lonnie on this?
Okay, well, if everyone's ready, we'll have that resolution up for vote next.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay. And we already talked about, the wards and boundary relocation, and the only other thing that we spent the most of the meeting on was, matching our business registration section to the business, registration resolution. We had a lot of discussion. It's not really ready for prime time yet. So, yeah, stay tuned if you're interested in any of that. Our meetings are public, 9 a.m., second and fourth Tuesday, so.
All right, any other questions for admin from council? All right, hearing none, let's go to land use, and I'll look to Committee Chair Tupin.
Yes, so I will defer. Do we want to have the Brewery Hill discussion first, so we can have Nick here for questions?
We can,
Or would you rather go
My
flat
guess
application?
is, my guess is the plat application is gonna be fairly quick because
Yeah,
it's
already
not really
kind of
optional.
set. Yep. Okay, so we will jump right into that. Bear with me, I'm gonna be working off multiple screens here. But we had a plat application review for the Alpine Lodge. We're just having this discussion on it this time, but we will be bringing it to a vote or approval, the following meeting. So specifically, I'm gonna share this, Great West Engineering, working with Alpine Lodge, and honestly, the Alpine Lodge has been working on doing a small RV park at their location for many years. They had conditions that were brought forth by planning board, as well as state regulations that they need to follow. And at this point, it looks like they have met all of their criteria. Great West did a fabulous, WWC did a great report. Is it Great West?
No, it's WWC.
Okay, I'm going between two different planning documents right now, so apologies for seeing two different logos. But they did a fantastic report, extremely thorough, and because all of the conditions have been met, it looks like they are gonna be able to move forward with their RV park. So does anyone want to see that application up on the screen? I'd be happy to pull it up. It's about 66 pages.
63. I do want to say that I was on council when we approved the preliminary approval based on them meeting those criteria.
Yeah, and the way it is, it's kind of like the subdivision. What happens is the city comes forth and says, if you X, Y, and Z, we will grant approval. And if they X, Y, and Z within their time frame, which their time frame expires like the end of April. If they do within X, Y, or Z, we are compelled to hold up our end. And, for those of you who are older, you may remember a time when, there was a subdivision across the stream where the city came in and said, well, we want to change, we want you to also A, B, and C, and it was a very expensive lesson for the city, so. I don't know that there's a lot of, from the city standpoint, what we do is we put professionals on it to make sure it's all met and we're covered. But I don't know that there's a lot of discussion about whether we do or don't do it.
Well,
Questions, comments?
Oh, I have a lot of
Councilmember Reed?
questions. I don't think it's that simple. There's lots of blame to go around for this. For the Youngs for doing it without permission. It said that he was gonna put cabins there, but instead of putting cabins there, he went ahead and started an RV park without permission. And then there was a retro thing, which I'd never heard of, but, you know, to me, how do you stop this from happening again? And this is maybe something for another time, but this is not, okay. He says, has it been paved? There's too much snow. Has it really been paved?
It has been paved.
Okay. Now,
That was the number one thing that was standing, that they hadn't done
Okay.
initially.
so on December 2nd, Mr. Fadness, who is their engineer,
That's ours.
okay, there were conditions, 12 conditions. And there is no trash container there now, which probably doesn't need to be in the winter. Landscaping has been completed. That's all it says. I come back here to the,
And Aaron, if you can do me a favor and let me know what pages you're on, so
Yep.
we can read along.
yep, okay, well, this is early on, December 4th. I don't do pages, I like to scratch on things, so. But then on May 6th, 22, staff report, Kelly Heaton from Courtney Long. It says, number 12, the condition, landscaping along the property adjacent to 212 shall be installed. Vegetation shall be low-growing and not exceed a height to impair site visibility. I went down there today, should have taken my shovel to get the snow, but there's only 3, they're called Carl Forester grass. There is no vegetation. Between each 6 of those, parking things, there's 3 potentillas. And back in the day, I hate to always talk about back in the day, but we had landscaping bonds for a subdivision. And I don't see anything about a landscaping bond, and even a design for what the landscaping was. So I don't think it's as simple as this. The Youngs aren't here, they're not on the screen. I'm concerned about that, because they can certainly answer some questions. But landscaping, in my view, is not, as Mr. Fadden says, completed. So that's for starters, but
And that might have been, that landscaping plan might have been in the original that was presented to the planning board, which I don't know if that's.
I don't think I've got a complete, the history of this is, I don't think I have the complete. And then Chelsea got February 19th, she got a note from Greg Jones that says, council minutes of May 10, 22 are included. I don't have that. I'd love to have that.
Well, and we have access to that. So if I may, I think I'm hearing two separate pieces of feedback. Let me see if I'm hearing it correctly. The first is a concern that we need to make sure when we go forward that this situation plays out more smoothly than, that future situations play out more smoothly than this one. And I don't disagree with that. There were several places where the way this was handled, it felt like we had the city's hands tied. It came to planning board, it came to city council, and so I don't disagree with that, and I think this is a really good lesson of when we see like a subdivision request come in, or excuse me, an annexation request, that we sit down and say, have we set up the right conditions? Because again, we're compelled once that's done. And then the second thing is I can look to see if we can have Jeremy available to speak to some of those specific questions when this is, in 2 weeks.
Okay, I'd like to, if there's a history of this, I'd like to have the whole history to read. I'm just curious, but I feel like I'm missing some key information. But mainly the council memo of May 10th, 22 I did not get that.
There is a lot of prehistory before it came to planning board and before it came to council that you won't really probably find written down.
Well, they do mention
And-
that the police went to, give them a cease and desist order, can't find it. It's not, there's there's lots of things that just fell through the cracks.
There's lots of things that were done on a handshake and weren't written down.
Promises were made.
Promises were made by the city and it
Back in the
put
day.
us in a really bad position.
Back in the day, it wasn't that long ago. It's
I'm
been
not
3
saying-
years.
I know.
Well,
I'm
and
just
to
saying
your point, I think
that.
that the action that's before us, when you say it's not simple, I almost hear you stating the pre-conditions in 22. And in fairness, what we've done here, and what I think our staff report does a good job of saying, here's what was laid out in 2022, X, Y, and Z, and they've met that. Now, you've also shared some questions on that, but what I don't want to do is go back to, I don't know what to, pre-settlement or when the agreement was made at that point, that's the one that we're closing up. And what I hear you saying, and I understand it, but I don't believe it's feasible, and I don't want to go there, knowing the history we've had in other situations, is go back and say, I don't like those conditions. I would have also liked to have seen X, Y, and Z. But we weren't on council.
I preface this by saying this can't happen again, and it's.
Yeah.
I absolutely.
It made me sad, because it wasn't like it used to be. You really, and what about landscaping bonds? Do they still have landscaping bonds?
We have done that, so planning board has issued that as conditions. So I think that part of the conversation is very relevant, and you're new to the council, but like I said, one of the things that I have done the whole thing is, A, we're a service organization, B, we get things done, but C, it has to be done in a consistent, well-documented way, that it can be the same way tomorrow and a month from now and a year from now, when something comes up we hadn't even thought of yet. And so that point of this can't happen again, amen, right? Not in a disagreement at all, but that doesn't mean we have the ability to change.
No,
the
I
particular
can't take a
situation.
bulldozer down there and turn, you know, I mean, I'm not talking
I
about that
recommend
kind of stuff.
against it.
I'm not, you know, like I said, enough blame is to go around. I
Yeah.
mean, so that's what I want to say is that just made me sad reading this, that
Yeah.
we're, things just.
I completely agree. I think that it was very unfair to the property owners and it put the city in a very bad position. And I really feel that, this administration has worked very hard to eliminate a lot of what happened there.
But they
And-
also did something without permission. I want to add that too. If you want to apologize for the city, that's fine, but I also think
No,
they
but
stepped
he
in.
thought he had it.
Yeah.
He had gotten permission from somebody in the city to start this.
And that was, in fairness, that was part of the discussion when these conditions were set out, that was raised, so which is why you're seeing some of that there. So-and-so told me to go, no, so-and-so didn't, well, so-and-so wasn't authorized to tell you. There's no disputing of, there was a lot of stuff that was
A
needed.
lot of mistakes were made.
Given a time machine, we wouldn't do that the same way again. You still have the floor, I don't want to cut you
No,
off.
I've had my say, but the landscaping, is nothing. I was down there today.
And in terms of the owners coming to speak, I think that they are waiting to come for next week, because this was just our discussion.
I understand
day.
that too.
Yep, and so they'll be coming to the next meeting for the decision.
But I think they were familiar enough with the process not to just go ahead and do things, because I've known them for 25 years, and they came to a lot of meetings, and they knew the process. So, like, again, I can't go down there with a bulldozer, we gotta move forward, that's fine. But we gotta stick to our guns at planning. I mean, we really do.
Okay.
So,
Any other comments from the table?
What I'll try to do, Ann, is dig out what came from the planning board, what promises were made based on that. There might also be, the landscape plan in that presentation. I can't really remember whether it was there or not.
And in fairness, all of these conversations, the planning board meetings are public meetings, the council meetings are public meetings. So if you need some help chasing those down, we've got folks that can
Okay.
help chase those down.
okay,
Again, there's none of this that we're trying to be secretive by any means.
I understand that, but
And then, so what I'm hearing as the takeaways is, okay to move this forward for action. And by the way, we've got a 20-day limit statutorily. But advise the Youngs that we'd like to have them here, and advise Jeremy we'd like to have them here. Is that a fair
Sure.
understanding?
they should be here.
Okay. Any other input from, are we okay moving that forward? Let me just kind of go around and get a straw poll.
Yes, please.
Okay, all right, thank you. Doug, if you would just let somebody else get a word in, that's right. Sorry, that did just say, Nick, thank you for your patience. That did take a little longer than I anticipated, but that's what we're here for, and I'm okay with that. That's fine
Okay.
and lovely.
So on the next note, the Brewery Hill, draft is in, the final draft of the Brewery Hill Trail, and I'm actually gonna give the floor to Nick, just to kind of give a synopsis.
Can I give a slight preview, just what you said?
Yeah, you give a synopsis of the synopsis, that'd be great.
This is online and has been for a couple weeks, so anybody who wants to go out and look at this, go to the city website, do a search for Brewery Hill in the little search box there, and it'll automatically pop up.
Okay.
And by the way, Great West, who prepared this, was not able to be here tonight. They had conflicting appointments. But we can, yeah, if we have
Those pretty
additional
blue
questions.
skies.
I know, right? Look at all that
It was
ground.
awful nice that day.
And then Nick, if you do want me to scroll to a certain page, just let me know.
Okay, you bet. I'll just, for the record, my name is Nick Addy, and I'm here on behalf of Beartooth Trails. So yeah, I guess to start at the very beginning, a little over a year ago, the conversation began. The mayor, some members of our organization, including John, who's here tonight, began kind of trying to talk to the state of Montana about putting a pathway down Brewery Hill, because there's not one there currently. We got to the point where we met with engineers from the state of Montana and also the grant manager of the Transportation Alternatives Program, which is a state-administered grant that is competitive that would pay for a pathway to Burr Hill. So they recommended, the state of Montana was like, this is a great, seems like a great transportation alternative, or TA, for abbreviation, a TA project. So what they also recommended was that we conduct a feasibility study, or like maybe a preliminary engineering study, to kind of know what exactly we needed. In hindsight, I think this was very wise, because there's some things that I don't know how to consider because I'm not an engineer. So this is kind of the final result of that, this final feasibility study. It's pretty lengthy. It's got a lot of 1As, 1Bs, 2As, 2Bs, scoring rubric, cost analysis for all of the potential outcomes. But I do agree with their preferred alternative. And
I'll try and
their,
get to.
what's that?
I'll try and get.
Yeah, I think, gosh, I printed it all out, but I cannot remember.
So
I got it.
we can
There it
use that
is,
as a reference.
Yeah, it's page,
I have it as page 21 as the preferred,
yeah, so I guess, that's the scoring matrix.
if the pages are numbered.
Yeah, so the preferred alternative, is on page 21.
Gotcha.
If you're interested in the
That's,
scoring.
that's manual number 21, not
Oh.
21 in the document.
Hold tight
It's
then.
past that, keep going. Keep going, there it is.
Yep, there we go.
Yep. So, just generally, the preferred alternative would continue from the existing pathway on Lazy M Street, would continue on the north side of Highway 78 to Alpine Basin, just east of like the driveway into Alpine Basin. It would then cross the street, using a crosswalk, continue down the south side of 78 to connect with the existing, sidewalks down on Hofstra Street. So, again, there's a whole matrix that I read through this afternoon that's very interesting.
Yeah.
Into that kind of stuff.
And if I may add something to that matrix, one request that I made from the city's standpoint, so we had the public hearing back in January, December, for everybody to come out and look at. One of the things that I went back after that matrix, because everything, there's a bunch of different elements, but we didn't have any priorities, one or the other, like this is 5 points, that's 3 points, that's 2 points. And one of the things that I came out of there was, the reason we're doing this is public safety. Why is that not right at the top? And then, behind that is wildlife safety sort of thing. But, so the way they did that in that matrix is they threw in a multiplier. So they just ended up doubling that. So if you see that in the matrix.
Sounds good.
And I think one of the things that I would like to get feedback from council to is, I guess, as we go through, this is basically gonna be the basis of our application. So if you look at the two resolutions that we had inside of the packet, one of them is accepting this document, which also gets them paid. So that was done with some urban renewal dollars to match that raised by volunteer organizations, which Nick kind of oversaw and set up. So we got from the homeowners association. So we got the cost of this study paid for. And then the second one is the resolution to go ahead and turn in the application to do it. And one of the things I'd like to make sure is that this document represents what council wants. So like I said, I told you the change that I made. Hey, this is about human safety. Let's flag that. I don't know if you guys have had a chance to come up with comments for tonight specifically. But if not, certainly within we'll entertain any comments there are tonight, but certainly within the next day or two, if you want to see any changes in this, we've got a timeline and deadline to get this submitted. And if we don't get it, then we resubmit it next year and the next year and the next year, sort of a concept. So anyway, that's part of where this matrix came. And by the way, it didn't change the matrix when they did that. It didn't change what their results were.
Yeah, it just kind of gave a understanding of what that matrix, or why those decisions were made, so,
Yeah.
which was very helpful.
Yeah, definitely.
So just specifically, one thing that I think is important to note is, one, this is extremely thorough and very well appreciated, and obviously I believe, and from everyone that I talk to on a daily basis, this is a much needed sidewalk and trail system, specifically trail system that will be coming down the hill. From someone who lives nearby and seeing the walker-bys all the time, it's necessary. So I really applaud Nick and everybody affiliated with Beartooth Trails and the city, just Great West, everyone putting this together, because it's been a long time coming, and to see this actually potentially becoming a thing is fabulous. So, and then one thing that's also worth noting is just, it wasn't my ideal trail system. But after looking at the weights and the matrix, it makes a lot of sense, and again, very comfortable moving forward. So,
It's a very thorough job,
yeah, very thorough.
very
So,
thorough.
Councilmember Root,
I
you have that look on
just
your
want,
face.
Not that one.
No, the other one.
Nick, do you have any concerns? I know this is probably the wrong place to say it, but do you have any concerns about safety?
Yes, I mean, obviously it'd be silly to say I don't have concerns about safety,
And,
but,
and what in particular are they?
I mean, it could be any number of things. I mean, I think anytime pedestrians cross a highway on a crosswalk,
Yeah.
there's a risk. In my world of risk, it's probability and consequence, you know, like what's the probability someone hits them? Probably pretty low. If it does happen, the consequence is probably gonna be pretty high, so on that risk paradigm, so. But I think that risk is, like, compared, relative to the risk that exists currently,
okay.
I see it as like kind of a null point
Right.
personally. I don't think that the risk of people walking down the side of the highway is any, you know, that is less safe, so, or more safe. So, yeah, I think that, you know, there's a risk, but I think it's gonna be done well, and people will adjust, and people will get used to it. And we have another, you know, pedestrian crossing on the highway just out of, you know, the picture here down in the left by the dog park, and, you know, we are all able to stop for pedestrians there, or pedestrians are able to safely cross there as vehicles are coming, you know, so.
Yep.
We cross streets all the time. I mean, I've legitimately seen people hit on the side, on 13th Street, you know, it happens, it's, you know, but I
You
don't
should
think
have,
that should like
look,
diminish
you,
the fact of what we're doing here.
Councilmember Root, and then we'll go to Councilmember Conley.
Go back, go Sandy, I can.
Oh, Councilmember Conley, you're up.
I was looking at this, and we're not gonna call it sidewalk. Is it gonna be?
Right.
Is it gonna be blacktop, or is it going to be,
It'll probably be like a 48-inch, like paved pathway. I'm not exactly sure the
what they're gonna pave
exact
it with?
surface type will be, but yeah, it'll either be asphalt or concrete probably.
I just thought that a blacktop would melt quicker
Yeah,
and stay.
but it'll also become icier quicker too. Things
Yeah.
absorb
So
heat,
that would
radiate heat.
And to add a little bit of that, so part of this, the MDOT does get involved and make their kind of final requirements, and so they will having input before this is done. This is us making our proposal, and what
Right.
is the proposal we want to make.
Right,
Here's why we'd like you to give us $1.5 million.
yeah.
right.
And I had a concern with the side, with the cross, you know, the crosswalk, obviously. I think that where they've got it is you're going uphill, like today, when it's icy, and then you're gonna stop people at the top of the hill for a crosswalk, and then they're gonna slide backwards and not be able to continue on because of ice and snow. Is there any way to get the crosswalk on a flatter terrain
Talked about.
rather than at the very top of the hill? I don't really care that it's close to, you know, Alpine Basin or Lazy M. I'm just thinking more, if you're stopping traffic, let's not do it on a hill.
I think that's probably the most visually for all people, like, is where, I'm looking at it, and I think that was probably the most.
Well, the people are walking out of Alpine.
Councilmember Tupin?
Can I speak to that a little bit? Just from experience of living in that particular location and seeing traffic, that is actually probably one of the flattest spots on that hill and with the best visibility. Really where you start to see the issue, and I'll use my cursor on the screen, is right
Yeah, that's
here
very
at that corner is where you'll see issues with the stopping. And realistically, again, just from experience and seeing the folks that are walking down, the majority are coming in from this area. You do have folks that are coming across this way, but again, I think that there's gonna be best judgment used, and I think that's realistic, and we have the same thing up at the top of the hill too. So, you know,
Will we have
They
flashing
did
lights?
fly
Yeah.
this with a drone and do a lot of, and in fairness, that was something that did come up from the public input, which is why we went back and changed our matrix to, number one thing, hands down, is
Yep.
human safety.
And I moved the matrix around, but it came out exactly the same, so I didn't mess with that anymore.
Councilmember Daniels?
Sorry.
Oh.
So, taking this crosswalk into account, we've also been approved to put the speed limit flashing lights on this section of the road. Are they going to be
So
near?
where we're looking at for that variables, the vehicle feedback sign is what they're technically called.
Okay,
So what we do is the current approval that we have is to put it on the sign where it changes to 35 miles an hour.
which is,
Just further up,
A little bit further
Yeah.
west, I believe, right there.
yeah.
you did right.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Right around here, I believe.
And it might, so
Yeah,
we'll put a flashing sign before
Thirty-five
that.
mile an hour is at that top corner.
Is that-
and then-
Right after the other
Yeah,
sidewalk.
and then the 25 mile an
Oh,
hour
that's-
is about
yeah,
halfway
There's,
down.
there's a second 35, but that's the second 35. So the
Okay.
first 35, which is up just barely east of the dog walk, or the dog park
Okay.
crosswalk,
Correct,
we'll have a flashing sign, slow down, slow down.
okay, so that'll also aid.
That will
Yeah.
help with it.
Lovely.
But where this crosswalk is, it's 25, right?
No.
No, it's
No.
still 35, it doesn't
Yeah.
change to 20. Now,
Yeah,
whether
that was my-
whether that changes when we're working with MDOT,
They may change.
they may, and I wouldn't consider that a bad thing.
No,
I was
I-
wondering.
But I know they do, their decisions are based on data and stuff, so that was one of the conversations is could we use that to help get this 25? And
Like
and
from
that's
the
a
golf
future
course,
to
yeah.
be had discussion.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think the sign should say thank you, like in Joliet.
They
because
they
I-
actually will.
oh,
Are they
because-
gonna have the smiley
because-
with the statue?
I don't know, but I always slow down in Joliet.
The
'cause
ones
it
we're
says
looking
thank
at, once you get going, it says thank you, or there's a smiley face, those are both options on the
Beautiful.
sign.
The ones in Europe are.
The only other question I had is that TV thing that, where the sidewalk narrows to 4 feet,
Yep,
that can't be moved?
Trail.
that's, I think that's in that alternative 2B section,
Right.
correct? Like, so I think that is just, I think that's either for wetlands mitigation or like utility mitigation, one of the two things.
Probably.
I wondered
Just-
what that was.
I can't remember exactly what spot it was, but, part of it was just like where that pond is, and I think maybe it narrowed there a little bit, or
Yeah.
crossing a driveway, and there's a few
And,
spots.
and one of the things that happened at that public meeting we had, there was a personal invitation to the property owner who came and was totally on board, and if you need more land, let me know, and so there was a whole bunch of things that he's very much at,
He's very excited to have people off his lawn.
well, he was very happy to help be part of the solution and not somebody who's standing in the way of it, so he's a firm supporter of it, so.
That was it, that was my question.
All right,
I have one more for us.
Councilmember, yeah.
Is this, I don't know if it's possible, but it would help me, I think it'd be kind of interesting, if they could do like a picture, like a drawing of a person, walking down, at an eye level, just to show us what it's gonna look like.
Yeah,
Is that possible?
I would do so, yeah.
We
I
can
think
make
we
that
could go just-
suggestion.
I would
yeah.
love that.
We
Yeah.
can go do it. Let's go right now.
Yeah, we can just go take a walk and.
And in fairness, as a follow-up, that, one of the things that happened after we had that public meeting, because there were two points that kind of came, that were kind of, does that move to the north side as a better? One of them was the stopping issue that was mentioned earlier. The other one was when the sun sets, that's a very blind hill to be driving up by.
Exactly.
And so there is an element of, we have to expect and hope that drivers are gonna drive. And also, when I cross the street, I look, just because I have the right of way, there's still physics.
There's
So,
always physics.
yeah.
Yeah. And I think to talk about statistics, right, like we cannot, there's outliers on either end of our spectrum, right? We're doing our best to just adjust to like a median or mean there. So we're, yes, there are outliers of like, it could be a couple times a year where the sun is at the right angle in the sky as it sets, probably summertime, at some point where it catches you for a certain amount of time, or it's icy. And again, to me, those are statistical outliers.
And your
They're
windshield
not
is dirty and-
They're not very likely to happen. They're not gonna be happening every single day, every day of the year. So, we are doing a good job of compromising here.
I was gonna say, I think negligence is gonna be your bigger issue versus like
Yeah.
things that you can actually control.
Yeah.
And to
And
be
just-
fair, we've had fatalities, before that roundabout was there, we've had a couple of different fatality incidents down at that
One
intersection.
fatality,
One.
something like that. you know, that's that piece, is that right now, it's
It's-
anything would be an improvement over where we are today, and it is
Yep.
very risky where it is today, because people, when it's icy, same thing, now they're walking in the middle of the road.
Yep.
The whole way, not just crossing ones that are crosswalks, they're just in the middle of the road.
Yeah.
And, you know, and there's kids on scooters going up that hill, you know, it's just not, there needs to be sidewalks.
Now e-bikes.
So I like to talk about like, risk a lot, like in my other world of like being an avalanche instructor. Risk is hazard multiplied by exposure multiplied by vulnerability. So, you know, the hazard is a vehicle, right? If you're a pedestrian, that's what your hazard is. Your exposure is reduced because you're crossing the street as being walking adjacent to the street for the entirety of that hill, increases your exposure quite a bit. And you're going to be vulnerable no matter what. Like you're a pedestrian versus a car, so you can't really control that, but it is actually much less exposure to just cross the street. Yes, you're exposed for that section, you have a lot of vulnerability there, but you have, even if you have less vulnerability throughout the whole walk down the hill,
Yeah.
you would still have more risk, so.
Will it be, lighted too?
Yeah, that would be the plan.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, that's part of that.
So people can see the person
yeah.
standing there at night.
Yeah,
I'm
and the
gonna-
pedestrian can see where they're walking to,
Yeah.
so.
I'm gonna exercise my discretion since we kind of opened it up to public discussion there. Any other, John, would you like to add anything to the conversation?
Sure, John Clayton, 123 South Hagen. I mean, this has been a priority of mine for many years, on the Beartooth Trail Forward. And I'm really pleased with how Nick has run with this and how you guys have cooperated, invested in this really wonderful study, which I think will help us get this grant from the state. Not a perfect project, but A, it's a hell of a lot better than, what we have now, and B, you know, the perfect project would be $50 million.
Right.
This is something that we're gonna get for a remarkably small investment on the city's part.
It's exciting.
I hope it'll,
Hope it works.
Any other public in the room? Any public online that would like to speak? If you could turn on your camera? That's all right, there. I'll see it.
No, that was Chelsea. Oh, that's you.
All right, with that, we'll go ahead and I'll bring this back to the table. Any other last questions? The one recommendation I've heard so far is a visual of what a person crossing the road would look like
Or
over the
walking,
dashboard.
just how the eye level of how that's gonna look. I don't know, it's just being interesting.
You guys just say you could do that, recreate Abbey Road. as a-
Beatles,
as a-
yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, there we go. Have an Abbey Road picture, I like
I'll
that.
be
Going
called.
barefoot.
Thank you. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, any final questions? Any issues with bringing this forward for action next time?
I don't think so.
All right. Council, or Committee Chair Tupin, do you have anything else you wanted to discuss?
I think that was a lot of land use and planning for the time being.
That was.
And so I think we covered some pretty exciting pieces. And we are still in the process of reviewing, some land use in town, but realistically, I think that should be a nice little cap for land use.
Any questions from the rest of council for land use and planning? All right, hearing none. Let's go to Public Works, and we'll look to Committee Chair Ronnie.
Okay, well, I guess let's bring up the capital improvement plan.
Oh, that's right, I stepped in your chair.
So, this is a very preliminary draft, and what Mike is primarily looking for is suggestions on additional, projects to include. If we have it included in the capital improvement, plan, then if money becomes available, we can do the project. If it's not in the plan, it makes it harder to do that project. So, I don't know if you've had a chance to read through this or not.
There were several things that have been added since this draft came out, specifically, the ice rink project / proposal, for Lions Park, people in that meeting. What were some of the other things that got added?
Correct me if I'm wrong, Jody, but I think Mike also said, if you think of something,
Yeah.
write it
Yeah.
down.
Write it
Yeah.
down, give it
Yep.
to him.
And that's
Send it
the
to
thing,
him.
so I'm just trying to share kind of some of the stuff that was
Yeah.
added or come
Yes,
up with that.
absolutely. No, he wants, if there's something that we did not include in this, or he has not included, send him write it down, send him an email, copy the mayor on it.
I saw that one of the parks for, the corner there of 19th and Broadway was included in there, but should there be another park for the Eagles Nest area?
So in fairness, yeah, I think write that down. We'd have to get the acquisition done first, but this is not a this is tracking potential and future projects, and I think Eagles Nest meets that qualification. So I think that would be, there is one for the Rocky Fork. I think it would be not bad to have one for the Eagles Nest property as well.
And it could even just be newly acquired properties, can lump it, because.
I think it wants to be more specific than that, so, to your point, they still could be lumped because of their adjacency to each other, but I think having them as two projects is not a bad idea.
Okay.
Yeah, and there was a part in there that he hadn't filled out on here with
The
the
priorities
priorities.
at the top,
Yeah, the priorities at the top, and of course, that includes the EDA street grants, the,
16-inch water main.
yeah, the 16-inch water main.
I'm assuming this is our table.
Yeah,
with
that's
that.
the table. He's populated that since we got our copy.
Yeah.
I'm
Those will
working
all be
to
immediate.
figure out, Lonnie, could you take a note that we want to figure out where to post this online, the latest draft from Mike, just for public input? I don't know if it'll be on a Public Works page or news or something, but let's get a copy of this out there so that you guys have the latest copy, but the public has the ability to offer. And then what we're looking for is just things that we spaced about because we were thinking about something else. So pickleball courts are on there, the tennis courts are on there,
Ice rink is now on there.
ice rink is now
Yeah,
on
there
there.
are, I mean, like. there
You know
are
what's
a few
not on there that we
people-
need to write down is Brewery Hill Trail.
Yeah,
I
think that's on there.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I think,
Yeah, I
okay,
think it
maybe
is
we'll
actually
actually,
on
yeah.
Yeah,
That does seem
Just
like
make
a-
sure.
yeah, it's actually number 1 on the
Okay.
priority for table number 8, the Trail and Brewery
Okay.
Hill. But on there is, like you said, is not the.
Nobody's saying to read that.
I know, sorry, I'm trying to get to where we're talking
Yeah,
about.
everybody else doing this, that's all right.
That's why I shouldn't be sharing.
Did you hear volunteer to share
25.
next time?
Yeah, I'm all for it, let's go. I just want to make sure everyone can keep up.
Right there.
Yeah, I saw it.
Yeah.
But the important thing is to read through it, and, please, if there's something that's near and dear to your heart, or that you feel that would be a great project for the city, or something we forgot.
No, but like, there are a few that are still left blank.
And this is not something that we're bringing for action next time. This is
No.
still something that
It's in
we're
the
gonna give some time to simmer and think of things that are, but eventually this will be something that'll be adopted by city council. And the idea is it's something we revisit every 5 years, and so we wanna, cause to me, one of the potential things that I saw as a potential weakness here is an awful lot of this stuff is literally stuff I'm hoping we get accomplished in the next 1-2 years. A lot of that, so we wanna make sure we're looking beyond, now there's some of that that's probably farther out than that, but like the water main, the trail is still a couple years out. But be looking at the next 5 years. Also, on here is significant purchases for departments, so like a machine that will clean the snow off of said future trail. If we need the dump truck, so that we can move
Yeah.
snow. Pardon?
Yeah, I'm surprised we didn't have
Oh,
one.
the recycling center drive-through.
Yeah, recycling sub drive was another one that we added to today as a potential.
Yeah, recycling.
Expansion.
So for those participating from home, I left it on the contents page, so I won't have to scroll through everything and kind of see where it's broken down and what summaries, if you have certain interests, where to go.
Yeah.
And by the end of the week, this will be online and you'll be able to go do a search for CIP. You can also see, I'm sure already the old one, and probably that's where we'll put the new one, is in proximity of the old one. By the way, in Mayor's comment rewind, the RFP is in Thursday's paper for the trash.
Excellent. Okay. And the other thing that we did talk about was, the Beartooth Industries contract for the recycling center. We're not actually probably going to be discussing that much tonight, as we've kind of given the mayor, direction to go back and revisit, and Mike and Kyle, the budget, how it works, so that we're getting our best, taxpayers' best use of that $6 fee. So that when we passed that, we kind of said we wouldn't go over that $6. So it's budget time, we're revisiting the contract, let's look at the overall budget, where we're at, and,
And currently, Beartooth is not involved. What happened is when it came to a realization that there was not a contract in place a month ago, they received direction from the city to hold off until we could get things worked. There was a council proposal presented about hiring those folks as a city employee. But again, coming back to, we like to be nice. It's not anything against that program or what they offer here, but it's what is the best use of taxpayer dollars. They were saying if we were to provide a supervisor, which is what the contract said, the past contract said they do, they'd need to up the dollars for that. And so when we looked at how much of a load is it really helping as far as running that facility, I think there's a negligible benefit to the taxpayers for that. So we're looking at, I'm inclined to say that we'll probably be doing that going forward with maybe a few more hours for the staff that we have hired and not continuing the contract with, or not reinitiating a new contract with Beartooth Industries.
Understand that?
Is this something we should hold off until the RFP for the trash company comes through?
I think that's gonna happen kind of naturally. We're having that as part of the conversation, with that. So that's, like I said, we're, right now, our action is no action, which, given that they've already stepped away, we're proving our theory of what the impact is or is not. So it'll be made in conjunction with that.
Linda, anything, anything I missed?
Nope,
Okay.
that was it. Good.
Okay.
Any other questions for Public Works from the rest of council? All right, seeing none. Correspondence, Lonnie, anything of note that came to you?
No, but I do think I forgot to put, Bill Foise's letter in, so I'll make sure to do that next time. That's been the only thing I have.
Can you remind us what that was?
That was on the, you guys.
It was on the snow removal from the
on the-
roundabout
Yeah.
north.
Okay,
On
the
east
trail,
side of the road.
the trail north of the roundabout,
Yeah.
okay. All right, thank you. So we've already talked about that, so we'll just add that to the packet as part of the public record. Any other correspondence that anybody would like to introduce?
I did get some correspondence and concerns of the 500, North Block. Doug got that as well, and so does Dave in Public Works. Just there is drainage issues on that block and has been for many years, which causes some pretty significant ice melt.
What's the cross street? 500 is,
So it'd be between 6th and 5th, I believe.
still gives me one street. What's the Y axis?
Oh, I'm sorry. Hauser.
Okay,
So yeah, but it's just basically after it branches off there, and I actually, it's very funny, about 5 minutes before I got this email, my husband Tony was on that block and about up above his ankles in a puddle. So it's pretty substantial, and I know that's happening all throughout town, but this has been an ongoing issue. So as things start to melt and just the amount of snow that's been accumulated there, it's probably gonna get worse, which does pose a safety concern, especially whether you're pedestrian or driving. It gets very slick there after dark, so.
actually, this is one we've already went, I am the Public Works Director, and Brian have already gone out and looked at it.
Excellent.
So we already, we are gonna be revisiting it when summer gets here and stuff as well. Part of that is one of the places where street curb and gutter work is slated as part of the CDA grant.
Excellent.
So that's,
Perfect.
that's gonna be part of that conversation.
Yep, so I just felt that was worth.
It took me a minute to read it. Oh, no, I know
That's
that one.
okay,
Yeah, no.
I'm pretty sure you got onto this.
Yeah,
but-
we actually already went out and looked at the site and talked to the homeowners there. We actually also extended that conversation up to Northward,
Yeah.
and that conversation. So I think there's gonna be a couple of different conversations. Again, it's not rushing to get there, but
No.
a couple of problems that have been ongoing for many, many years that we're gonna try to put to rest and have them not show up at the table again.
I just felt it was valid
I
to bring
appreciate
up. And, again, have also just received some similar type of feedback in terms of snow removal and mounds, which I've also spoke with Mike with Public Works and got a little bit of a better understanding just in terms of we are lacking in some resources to be able to actually remove massive amounts of snow. So, I appreciate that Public Health and Safety is working on the snow removal and just the snow ordinance, because I do think that specifically we need to have better cooperation between city residents, city staff, as well as businesses that are professionally managing or removing snow. Because I get a lot of mixed reviews from a lot of different people, and it would just be really great to have consistency.
Agreed.
All right, what I'm gonna do at this time is we're gonna open up the agenda for public comment. This is for anything on or off the agenda. If something's bitching, you'd like to speak out at this time, this is your chance to be heard by council. If you'd address your comments to me, they will listen in. Again, this is not a time for discussion, or resolving issues, but it's a chance, opportunity for all to be heard by the council. With that, I'll go ahead and open the public comment and look first to the room. Anybody in the room who'd like to get up and speak, you're welcome to do so. Anyone at all? Going to online, seeing nothing in the room. Again, if you could turn on your camera, that would be delightful. At the very least, if I see a mute button come on or off. Going twice, not seeing anything. And 3 times, we'll go ahead and close that. Thank you all, for coming and attending our meeting tonight.
Thank you.
And I'll look for a motion on number 12.
Move to adjourn.